I'm being a little ambitious today. I brought the bed with it. So I'm gonna take a wild stab and say that whoever was in here last, honestly, if I had to guess, probably just ran it in with an impact gun. But these are supposed to be one piece. There's daylight coming through there, which we obviously can't have if we want a working parking brake. Oh yeah, I can just rip that thing right off there. So. So, we are back here today working on the old two-wheel drive project here. I'm being a little ambitious today. I brought the bed with me today. And do I really think we're going to get to that point? No. I figured, well, worst case, I just have to tow it back home. You know, whatever, not that big of a deal. But I'm being hopeful here. So, basically, what we have to do today is. Like you guys saw in the last video, we got, and I've talked about it in the past, we got a different axle for the rear of it, which I'll show you guys the old one right now. You can see the pinion gear tried to eat the center section there. But the new axle we put in it, the brakes are all rotten. So I'll show you guys that when we kind of get to there. But basically, we're going to go ahead and take all the brakes off of this axle that's in the truck and replace them with all the brakes and everything off the axle that came out of it. Another thing that we ran into too is the this brake line right here for some reason will not reseat in the brake line. So we're going to go ahead and pull all of the brake lines and everything off that axle and put it on this axle, just because obviously we know that one was fine as far as that stuff goes. All the brakes are good. And really I think I probably kind of went over this before, but I'll kind of go over it real quick again, is there's nothing really wrong with the actual brakes on this new axle. The parking brake is what has the issue. All the parking brake stuff is attached onto the backing plates, and that was something that kind of slipped my mind when I was looking at it on the ground. And so it doesn't have a parking brake right now. So, and I obviously want it to have a parking brake. So we're going to go ahead and swap all that stuff. Something else we did was I did it real quick here a little bit ago because we needed to get new hardware for the cover. And so I wanted to kind of figure out what hardware we needed to. So that is actually a Dorman part. I got it from O'Reilly's, and I want to say they're like $80 or something like that at O'Reilly's. That is a 2008 to 2010 6.4 like F250, F350, single wheel diff cover. It's the factory cover that came on those trucks. It's a solid cheap upgrade. So I figured it needed the diff cover that was on this had a pretty decent dent in it. You can see it's got a, kind of hard to tell, but it's got a pretty good dent in it. So instead of just taking the cover off the other axle, we went ahead and did that. It was readily available. I was going to order a BD diff cover for it, but they were out of stock, so I just went ahead and did this. Maybe later on down the road we'll change it to something else, but this will be fine for now. So anyways, guys, I'm going to get after it. Time's a burning, so I'll kind of touch base as we get going through the project. right, so this is probably going to be pretty hard for you guys to see, but if you look right there, you can see the locating pin for that nut, and it's not in its groove. So I'm going to take a wild stab and say that whoever was in here last probably just stuffed the thing in there, and honestly, if I had to guess, probably just ran it in with an impact gun. That's a little disheartening here. So I got to take and try and get this rotated back around to where it's in its slot so I can get it off without destroying the spindle. There's daylight coming through there, which we obviously can't have if we want a working parking brake. I can damn near, oh yeah, I can just rip that thing right off there. So, good thing we have spare parts from another axle. So, I wanted to get this torn apart first. That came out of there pretty interestingly. Like I say, these are, well, I didn't say that before, but these are supposed to be one piece. And when I pulled loosened the nut up and started taking it out, this whole thing separated because that pin back in there wasn't where it was supposed to be. You can see that pin's all messed up. Again, good thing we have a parts axle because, well, we're going to have to steal the axle nut off of that one. So. So the way I always do this here with the axles, oh dang it, it's taking my paint off. Guess I'm gonna have to hose that with some more brake cleaner to get the rest of that off there so I can repaint her. Anyways, so the way that I always do this is, because the axle, I should have shown you, I'll show you on the other side. But because the axle it's got a ridge on it with an O-ring, it's a very snug, tight fit in the hub. So you always throw a little bit of Loctite on the bolts, and then what I'll do is I'll kind of get all the bolts started, and then I'll push if I can get it in there with one hand, I'll push throwing a little bit of grease on that O-ring helps too. But then I'll push it in and then run the bolts in, so that way it's all centered nice and even with the bolts in there, and so you're not you don't push it in and you're trying to line the bolts up and it becomes a pain. So that's normally how I do that. Okay, day 6, hour 22. So we flipped the brackets over, got the bolts in. This is the easy side. I think I told you guys that in the last video, but the hardware they sent with the brackets was one, it was too small. It was, what was it, 7/16? Yeah, 7/16 hardware. The holes in the frame are 1/2 inch or roughly 1/2 inch. It took a little bit of, hole enlargement to get 1/2 inch bolts to fit. These holes, again, this was my mistake, but these holes are 7/16, so we went ahead, I cut myself. So we got grade 8 hardware. The hardware they sent, that's what I was getting at. The hardware they sent was grade 5, so we put grade 8 in it because, well, it's suspension parts, and, grade 8 is probably a smart idea. I would recommend that if you're putting one of these kits on, that you pull the fuel tank, because unless you got someone with little midget hands like her, it's incredibly difficult to get those nuts in over there on those bolts. I'm not sure about the pinion angle. Probably can't really tell, but the pinion angle is pretty terrible. So we'll see how that goes. We got the diff cover on. We got some nice stainless hardware. It's probably going to leak, but whatever. All the brakes are on. Everything's in place. We're probably going to have to bleed the brakes. Obviously, we haven't gotten that far yet. I think that my ambition of getting the bed on today was probably a little bit too ambitious, but at least it'll be ready for the bed whenever we get it back in here to put said bed on said truck. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. We didn't make it that far. We made it really far, actually. Just not as far as I was hoping for. Okay. So we got pretty much everything done as far as, hopefully I didn't make you guys dizzy there, as far as the rear suspension and everything back here. Literally, it's ready for the bed. And if we had more people and more time today, it is a Saturday and I'd like to, go home and relax a little bit. But if we had more people and more time, we get that bed flipped over. Like I say, it's a little too late in the afternoon at this point to start on that. So that's kind of where we're going to leave it. And I think we'll come back to it next weekend and get the bed flopped on it and hopefully go do some burnouts. So we did get the chain for, which I realize now I should have tightened that a little bit more, but that's okay. We got the chain to hold that. Oh, I don't even know if I said anything about that. We filled this full of water. So this tire is completely packed full of water to give the back end of the truck kind of more. It is 2-wheel drive, so we wanted more weight back here to kind of help with, traction, basically. So I was going to take it out, and then I started thinking about it and realized that was probably a bad idea as far as traction goes. So we'll have to find some other stuff maybe on the front of the truck that we can take out to kind of, you know, get back rid of that weight. But anyways, that's kind of what we're going to leave it for now. I did have to cut, which I'll probably maybe someday come back to these and clean these up, and, you know, maybe I'll do that next week before we flop the bed on it. And I may actually end up just cutting the rivets out and popping those off, but because of how far the spring dropped right here, it was actually hitting this pad and wouldn't allow it to go down any further. So we had to chop those off. But yeah, so, and hopefully I guess I didn't even notice that, but if we end up later on, so the only reason why I'm not going to drop it any further than it is, and in fact we may have to raise it up to the next hole. We'll see how it sits once we get the bed on it, because it looks like it sits a little low in the rear. If it's not too low, if it's like half-inch low, whatever, we'll leave it. But if it's, you know, a good majority low, then we'll go ahead and lift it back up to that other hole. But the only reason why I don't want to drop it more is because these tires were bought actually for a four-wheel drive truck, and so the tires are physically too big for this truck. So in the front, this bumper came off something else, so this was not cut for these tires. But you can see it already rubs back in there, and it rubbed pretty bad on the stock bumper. And so I don't want to chop the front end down and give myself more tire clearance issues. You know, who knows? Maybe we'll go a little bit lower, but yeah. So that, and we'd have to figure out the pinion angle stuff, because if we drop it down to that next angle, I don't like the way that the pinion angle looks. The pinion angle is pretty nasty when in that lower hole without even the bed on it. So like I say, I don't want the pinion angle to be horribly far out, and we'll have to, I'm assuming eventually we'll probably end up having to cut the perches on the axle and, you know, kind of swivel the axle around and fix the pinion angle. But yeah, so anyways, guys, we will see you on the next one.